I'm just going to do a quick video for you to just give you an insight to what I call the anatomy of the establishment, using the eagle as a metaphor. The central concept of the way that the establishment attempts to keep us connected to them is to create what I call a duality. Okay, a left and a right, or black and white, or pro and anti. And that's really been the dialectic that they create. And as long as you have that pro and anti, left and right, Republican and Democrat, and even whatever the party is, because they typically fall into one of them, we'll talk about it, you have the ability to manipulate people always back into the establishment, because you're forced to choose one side or the other side, which are essentially two heads of the same coin, which we've talked about that. In the teachings that we talk about at VA Shiva, we want to take people out of this dialectic, but into a systems approach. And the systems approach gets us out of this left-right paradigm, gets us out of this notion of Republican, Democrat, but it focuses us on trusting ourselves, going into our communities, and building a bottoms-up movement. So if you consider this for a second, okay, over here, I'm going to call it the establishment, okay? And opposing that, you over here. And this includes you, your friends, family, etc. And you have the eagle here. The eagle now has, or two shoulders. I'm going to use this as a shoulders. It's got its talons here. So what I want to consider is, on its shoulders, if you look at it from a standpoint politically, let's take the left. On the left shoulder of the establishment, what may seem like different is people like, let's say, the Clintons. Over here is the Bidens now, right? The Obamas. Let's call it the Democratic establishment. Similarly, over here, on this side, you have the McConnells, Mitch McConnell. You have the Romneys. You have the Murkowskis. This is a Republican wing of the establishment, the Republican establishment. The reason I'm doing them up on the shoulders there is to emphasize that the establishment is one, which is ahead of the ego, but it's got these two shoulders, which are really the ties to the establishment that are very close to the establishment. So to the people who are on worry, it looks like these are two different people, but you literally have the Bidens, right? Over here, you have the Clintons, you have the Obamas, and over here, you have the McConnells, you have the Murkowskis, and there could be others, right? There's a whole bunch of people over here that form the Republican wing of the establishment, right? So you can put them over here. They're the Republican wing of the establishment. Now, what's clever that the establishment does, the establishment also has the not so obvious establishment. And the purpose of this establishment is to bring the masses, which is us here, back into the establishment. And on the left, it has people like Bernie Sanders here. It has people like AOC, people like Warren. They speak a good game, right? They'll talk, over here has the unions. And this wing of the establishment is what I call the left radical, the not so obvious establishment, right? On the right now, similarly, the not so obvious establishment. And today it includes, you have people like Tucker Carlson. You have people like Trump here, people like Cruz over here. And this is the right radical, and they're really not radical, not so obvious establishment. And the acronym I use for these is the NSOEs. Oh, you have Kennedys over here, okay? Kennedys are sort of here. So what you see, and you can apply this to any country, by the way. So you have the key thing to understand is that both wings of the establishment, if I want to put these feathers here, so you have the shoulder aspects, the anatomies. Here you have the shoulder, right? The shoulder aspects of the establishment. And the shoulder aspects of the establishment here, this is the obvious establishment, right? So this is the obvious establishment. And the obvious establishment here. But the most compelling part of this is a not so obvious establishment. The not so obvious establishment here on the left and the right, they serve one interesting purpose. Their purpose is the following: to take people and bring them back Oops, I don't want to use that color. Let me go back. I want to use a purple color because it's best representative here. The purpose of the not so obvious establishment is to take you and to bring you right back into the establishment. Same here. That's the purpose of Trump. Whether he knows it or not, and I think he does know it, but that's the service he has, to bring people back into the establishment. These people serve the role of taking people and bringing them back to the establishment. The establishment does not want people leaving its clutches. The establishment thrives on people staying within its two-winged establishment, the left and the right, Republican and Democrat. The establishment needs these wings, okay? It needs these wings on both sides. The establishment needs both of the not so obvious establishment wings because they know the masses, they know the everyday working person gets more and more angry every year, that they're figuring out things. So they have the not so obvious elements of them to make sure they throw out enough rhetoric. So on the left, Bernie Sanders, is part of the wings of that left establishment. He's not part of the shoulder, but he's part of the wings, exists to say working people, revolution, whatever he'll say. He'll say anything, okay? And by saying anything like that, working people think, wow, Bernie's going to fight for me. Bernie's going to give me free stuff. So Bernie and AOC and Warren, Elizabeth Warren, they're all fakers. In fact, they're worse than the establishment. At least with the establishment, we know where they stand. But for working people, the not so obvious establishment is used to keep their hopes up. It's used to say all the rhetoric. But at the end of the day, what did Bernie Sanders do? When you go back to the diagram, what did Bernie Sanders ultimately do when it came to the elections? Ultimately, what Bernie Sanders and all these guys do is they sell people out, right? So Bernie Sanders' job right here is to bring people back into the Clintons. That's what they do. Their goal is to bring people right back into the establishment on the left and the right. Same thing here. And in fact, they will create a fictitious, fiction as though they're against the establishment, okay? So Bernie will even attack. So for example, over here, if you go right here, Bernie will even say stuff against, the AOCs of the world, right? So this is, let's say, the DNC. And over here is the RNC. Let's put them right here. Okay? He will even say something against the RNC, so a DNC, in the case of Bernie Sanders. But he'll never really get to the heart of the real issues. So Bernie Sanders will say enough against the DNC, so you think that he's really a fighter against them. But at the end of the day, when the primaries end, he bows down to Hillary Clinton. He doesn't create an independent movement. And that's how the left wing of the establishment is used to bring people back to the shoulders of the Democratic aspect of the establishment, be it Biden or Clinton. And if you notice, Bernie and Tulsi Gabbard, yeah, I got to put Tulsi Gabbard in here. She's part of this nonsense too, okay? Tulsi Gabbard's right here. Can't forget her. I want to let people get away with, so we don't have any illusions here. But Tulsi Gabbard's right in here, okay? Tulsi. All right. So you have on the left and the right, the establishment politicians who exist to manipulate you back and working people back into the establishment. So the left has their rhetoric. They need the Bernies, etc. And on the right, more recently, who do we see? Trump. Okay? Trump is now saying stuff against the RNC, the rhinos. He's got his own political PAC, right? And he will just say enough, but McConnell's already said he'll support him. Trump has already for 4 years worked with McConnell. They're not any different. They all kissy-poo up in the end. Trump is not building an independent bottoms-up movement. This is a litmus test, okay? Neither is Bernie. Bernie had the opportunity, but he doesn't because back room, they're all one. They talk a good game to keep this dialectic up as though Trump is against the RNC. Remember, Trump supported Ronna McDaniel to become chairman of the RNC. And then Bernie will say stuff against the DNC, but he supports the leadership of the DNC. It's one racket. And the anatomy that I've drawn here perhaps helps you see this. So you have the head, which is the establishment. You have middle people like McCain who play both sides. On the right shoulder, you have Romney's and the McConnells, are the obvious establishment. And then, but the wings of the right establishment now are growing, right? You have the Cruzes, you have the Trumps, right? You have Tucker Carlson. Tucker will act as though he's against the establishment. He'll say stuff against the RNC, but ultimately he's an entertainer. So what you ultimately have on the left and the right, these people are all theater. It's all entertainment. Gore Vidal said, basically politicians are ugly looking actors. That's what he said. He said they're ugly actors, and that's what they are. So you have to understand this dynamic. You have the shoulders of the eagle, which is the obvious establishment, but the wings of the eagle are so necessary. So the Democrat establishment, by the way, needs Trump. The Republican establishment needs Bernie. The Republican establishment needs Trump. The Democrat establishment needs Trump. And what's the purpose of all of this? Exactly. Someone just said, let's put this right up here. They all want us to fight against each other. You nailed it. That's what the purpose is. The purpose is for all of us to fight against each other. And we don't see our way out because on every issue, they make it pro versus anti. They don't ever get to the, and they extend these issues. So for example, think about something like cancer. Cancer goes on forever. Climate change, pro-climate, anti-climate. No one talks about the goal of reducing pollution. It's pro-Paris Accords, anti-Paris Accords. And that's what they do. And you know what they're doing through all of this? Through all of this, they're saying cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. The RNC sends you out donation requests. Trump sends you out donation requests. Bernie sends you out donation requests. Tulsi Gabbard, they're basically collecting money for their coffers. And these people have no jobs. I mean, I work as a full-time scientist. This is something I do as a public service. Many of you work for a living. You are learning this while you're working. These people's job is to screw you. Their full-time job is to be on the shoulder of the establishment of the eagle or the wings to manipulate you. They got it down to a science. So I hope this helps you understand from a very simple way. It's not the greatest drawing. I mean, could probably a better artist do it, but I think you get it, right? You get right here that the establishment basically has these two wings. All right, now, what can we do? The issue is, what do we do? So when you look at this diagram, let's look at what we can do, right? Because it's enough to, now that we understand what is to be done, okay? What is to be done? Well, when you look at this diagram, what do you see here? You see something very interesting, right? Let me bring it up again. The establishment doesn't want us escaping, right? They don't want us leaving them. They don't want us going here, right? All of us. They don't want people over here building up a powerful bottoms-up movement. The opposition to this is the, what's the best color here to use? Let's use this green. Let me use this. Bottoms-up movement. They don't want a bottoms-up movement. Keyword is a movement. They don't want a bottoms-up movement. They want centralization. Remember, they thrive on centralization of power. They want centralization. We want decentralization. The key here is to have extraordinary decentralization. All right? So we need to get the hell out, and we need to build a bottoms-up movement. More and more people need to fight against this force and leave, not to leave to another party. Let me be clear. It's not sufficient about going to another party. What we need to do is we need to build a bottoms-up movement. A bottoms-up movement. A bottoms-up movement means, number one, we get it very clear in our head, this eagle metaphor. We get it very clear in our head that the eagle, the wings of the eagle are used. Trump and Bernie. Trump has essentially become the right wing's Bernie, and Bernie is the left wing's Bernie. Okay? And they need Bernie. That's why they keep him around, because he riles young people up, and Trump gets, real hardworking people lined up. And both of these people, the unfortunate thing that we need to understand, both of them are fighting. They're fighting for who? They're fighting for the American working class. They're fighting to manipulate the American working class right here. They want to use people and bring them back into the establishment. And this is what's called a simple word that I can use, enslavement. That's what they want to do. They want to enslave you by creating on every issue the left-right dialectic while they drink their martinis and have their day and chill out. But this is all theater. And the only way you can understand this clearly is if you take a systems approach. And if you understand that we, as an emerging group bottoms up, we need to build our own independent communities, bottoms up. And then we need to take action independently. Now, in order to do that, we need a technology. We need a science. It's not going to happen overnight. Just like if we want to build a bridge, we have to understand Newton's laws. We have to have steel workers. We have to have people who understand physics. And then you build a bridge. But you have to start with engineering systems theory. If you want to build an airplane, people tried that for many, many years. They tried, they fall off cliffs, their wings break. You've seen all those old movies. But eventually someone understood something called Bernoulli's principle, which was a science. And then we got a plane off 12 seconds, right? And then we got it more. And then we built, now we have restaurants up in the sky. Quite amazing. It came from engineering systems theory. And then the most important thing is it's not just learning all this stuff. It's you have to build community with people, because as you learn, as your consciousness raises, you may find yourselves lonely because you have shifted yourself into a realm where not everyone is caught up to you. It is very, very important at that point to have community of other people, because think about how many nuclear physicists on the world, a few, right? Think about how many people are great carpenters, or few. How many people really understand engineering or science or plumbers? But once you learn that skill set, you get better by communing with others. So once you get this education, you need to commune with other people. So that's the building community piece. And the third piece we need to do is we need to take action locally. Locally by becoming leaders in our communities on every issue, be it on the issue of medical freedom, be it on the issue of election integrity. That technology to do that is an educational, integrated system. We need education, we need community, and we need the ability to take action. So that's what I've spent my whole life doing in retrospect, okay? I built email, I built Cytosolve, I built EchoMail, I went to MIT, got all those degrees, but I've always been interested in traditional medicine, integrating that, been interested in science and physics, been interested since an 18-year-old on-the-ground activist raising hell. Wherever I go, ran the Senate campaign, we discovered that they did election fraud. I didn't walk away. We have not 2 lawsuits, but filed, and 2 ones that are the only ones out of all the stuff that Trump did that are still in court and have multiple victories. So what we need to do is we need to take all of that integrative knowledge, is what I've done, systems theory, engineering systems theory, activism, building community, technology, and put it together in a platform. That's what the VA Shiva Truth, Freedom, and Health platform is. It's a platform for you to break away from this nonsense, okay? This is what they want us to do. They want us to be involved in this nonsense. This nonsense is slavery, okay? The nonsense is slavery to keep us in their clutches. So what I want to emphasize is when you learn this systems approach, you're going to learn, number 1, the science of systems, which you can't get anywhere else. I've made it. You don't have to go to MIT 20 years. You're going to learn it in about 1 hour. Every Monday evenings I teach this, and then the courses are online. You can get certified. You can yourself become a teacher. 3 hours of your time, you're going to learn the science of systems. Number 2, you're going to have a community. And number 3, we're like at VA Shiva, the movement's like a weapons factory. We build technology, we build science, so you can go on the ground and educate people. That's how the world is going to change. It's not going to change from this. No way. Where this is going to lead us is to slavery. And that's what they want. The reason we're here today in this fascism is not because of them. It's because that you didn't have leaders. You didn't have people educating you. The leaders that you thought, the Kennedys and the Sanders and all these people, are all scumbags. It's the only technical term I can use. So let me play this video and I'll come back to show you in a very practical way what we're doing. But all of you, just think about this image here. All of you can draw it now. You can share this with your friends. And you can see again, in summary, the shoulders of that eagle are the obvious establishment. But don't forget the wings. They flap, and there it goes to sucker you back in. And that's what Trump's doing. He's a master at it. Okay, he had 4 years. He brought in Ivanka and Jared. He didn't bring anyone because he didn't, don't tell me you didn't have the time. In the last 4 years is when we were heading towards forced vaccinations, when we had censorship, when we had nothing was really fundamentally done. All of us working people waited. Nothing happened. He was supposed to play ninth dimensional chess. No, he didn't even know how to play chess. Okay, that's where we're at today. So let me play the video here for you, as I always do, because I want you to listen to this video. If you've heard it once, listen to it again, because it has a lot of very powerful positions here and political theory here. And without that political theory, you will always be taken advantage of. So if you go to vashiva.com/join, again, we have a platform. You can support it. You can contribute, not contribute. But let me just play the video for you. Many of you have seen it before. Listen again. It's a very powerful and profound video. Here we go. We have allowed our country to be taken over from within. And the end goal is you will have a homogenized world where we will become slaves. Because there is a condition among the elites that really thinks they're better than you, deep down inside them, that you don't deserve the freedoms you have. They don't. Okay. This reality is what people need to wake up to. And we need to all unite, working people. There's only one movement that can do that. And that is the movement that we started creating here in Massachusetts, the movement for truth, freedom, and health. Look, I've been a student of politics since I was a 4-year-old kid, studying revolutionary movements, left wing, right wing. There's a physics, there's a nuclear science to destroying the establishment. To build a bridge, you need to understand Newton's equation. You need to understand the laws of gravity. You need to understand Poisson's ratio. There is a way to build a revolution. And that's why I put this together. My goal is to train an army of truth, freedom, and health leaders. We don't need followers like social media. We need leaders, but they need training, because the educational system does not teach them history, nothing. So in 3 hours, that's what I've started doing. That's the solution. We got to train people. First, with understanding what a system is. The second is understanding the interconnection between truth, freedom, and health. Freedom is the ability to move freely, communicate freely, right? Talk freely. Without freedom, you cannot convert ideas, hypothesis into truth, which is science. And without freedom, you can't really get to truth. And without truth, you make up fake problems and fake solutions, which means you destroy our health. And without health, which is the infrastructure of us and our body, you can't fight for freedom. Third concept is it has to be bottoms up, working people, people who work uniting. And what the right wing has done is whenever you say working people unite, that must be communist. Meanwhile, they've let the Democrats run unions, which suppress workers, completely corrupt. But when you look at the arc of American history, it's been when working people came up. We need to go local. Every solution I'm coming up with as a part of this movement, we're giving the science, which is the truth, and then we tell people what they can do on the ground. Like with election fraud, you don't need to wait for some lawyer. Our goal is to train people, Dave, to go local, to go local, to go local, fight locally. Forget lawyers, forget politicians, forget celebrities. You've got to learn politics, and there is a science to it. They lock us down, we should be ready to shut them down. And the fourth part of this principle is a not so obvious establishment. So when you look at a system, there's always something that disturbs you from getting to your goal. Well, the biggest disturbance is a not so obvious establishment, which are those people who claim they're for you, on the left and the right. The Al Sharptons who tell black people I'm for you. The Tucker Carlsons. Do you think any true anti-establishment person will ever be on Fox or CNN? I don't think so. They both mislead working people back into the establishment. Without this solid understanding of political physics and theory, you're screwed. You're going to follow on the left wing, Bernie Sanders. Oh, he said something. Or Robert Kennedy. Scumbags. Or you're going to follow, some right-wing talk show host. They're not going to lead us to liberation. It's us. And that political physics, it's a nuclear science of change. Bottoms up. We have to organize to understand that there is people who talk a good game and then look at what they actually do, left and right. I'm sorry, Sean Hannity may say some good things, but I don't see the urgency in his voice to get something done, and it can only come when you weaponize yourself with the right knowledge. You need to be able to identify a rat. Christ didn't go after the Romans, right? It was the Pharisees and the Sadducees who screwed him up. His own quote-unquote people. And that's where we're at. So these four concepts I've built into a curriculum. People can go to vashiva.com, and it's an educational program. We need to train people in political theory. You need to have physics, and I've created that curriculum. People need to get educated. We need to get educated fast. And within a half an hour, I can teach people. 2 years of MIT control systems, I teach people those concepts. Then I apply it, anyone can understand it. And then you say, oh, I got to build a bottoms-up movement. They have to get politically astute, and then they have to go locally and act, not sit there on social media. They have to act locally, defy locally, do civil obedience locally, but with knowledge on how to build a movement. The Senate campaign's expanded to the Movement for Truth, Freedom, and Health, and they can find it on V as in Victor, A, Shiva, vashiva.com, so people can sign in. They can get access to a bunch of videos. If they want to take a course and become a Truth, Freedom, and Health leader, I offer a full scholarship there, but we want people to make a commitment that they'll study, that they'll get certified, that they'll go do activities on the ground. So go to VA Shiva, Victory America Shiva, vashiva.com. And the third principle here is that we have to be aware of what I call the controlled opposition, the not so obvious establishment on the left and the right. And it is that not so obvious establishment that keeps bringing people back to believe in one wing of the establishment or another. And that's what they want. They want to control the theater. They want to control the WWE wrestling match. And they want to make all of us participants in that. And it's time we break from that. And the way to do that is people must start with a foundational understanding, a scientific understanding. And I'm just a catalyst here, Tom, where I've been fortunate to go through the American journey, get all those degrees at MIT, fortunately be able to communicate reasonably well, and I can educate people bottoms up.
Well, and you can do this through your class, and we're talking about the guy who invented email, and this is something that's going to teach you the science to what is working. There's a science to politics.
There's a science to politics. You nailed it, Tom. There's a science. There's a science. There's an engineering science to politics. And what they will discover is that same engineering science to political systems also is invariant in your computer system, in your body. In fact, one of the tools that they get, Tom, is once they learn the science, I give them a tool to understand their body as a system, Tom, that these same three forces, what I call transport of information, matter, and energy, which is freedom, conversion, which is, for example, like your digestive process, which is no different than getting to truth, and then infrastructure, or structure, which is the health of you. All these three same phenomenon, Tom, appear everywhere in the universe. So if we're going to build a political movement, let's ground it in universal laws. That's what truth, freedom, and health is. So they understand this. So they're getting like sort of triple whammies. They get to understand science. They get a bunch of years of MIT education distilled. Then they can understand that they can use it for their bodies, but they can also use it to understand political systems.
All right. So folks can go to in the class. Now, there's the class is normally $100, but if folks put in my name as the code, Tom Roten, then they can get 10% off, correct?
Yeah, so anyone listening right now, what we've done is we want to support education and tuition. We understand some people, basically, Tom, people support this entire movement through contributions, and which go to support the educational process. So those of people who want to take the Truth, Freedom, and Health Warrior course, if they just use Tom Roten, TOMROTEN, we're also going to give them a tuition scholarship discount of $10. Anyway, this course, Tom, I used to offer it at MIT all over the world. We used to charge like a couple of thousand for it, you know? And I used to be on the, you know, I used to be invited all over the world to teach it, taught it at Harvard, et cetera. But the bottom line is this is for working people who can't afford that. And people who support our platform get access to it. So it's a very powerful way of teaching people almost like the quantum physics of system science. And once they learn this, they will have the foundation. So no one's going to move them the left or the right, the latest flavor of the politician on the Republican side or the Democrat side. They're going to become like Jedi Knights, Tom. That's what the real goal is. They're going to become real warriors beyond left and right.
Yeah, I think people are waking up to that there's a lot of people that talk a good game, but there's no action, and they feel like they're being played because the elites of the world, I call them the tyrannicals, they think they're better than you are.
Yeah, that's what it's about, Tom. I mean, I just did a little thing on my yesterday morning. I drew a picture of the eagle, Tom. I have a little drawing board, and I said, look, the eagle, the head is the establishment. The shoulders have both wings of the obvious establishment. You know, on one shoulder on the right, you got McConnell and Romney and those guys, right? On the other shoulder, on the left side, you got the obvious establishment of the Democrats, like the Bidens and the Clintons, the obvious, you know, complete corrupt people, right? But what people don't understand is on the wings, right? On the edges, they have the radical, quote unquote. They're not even that radical in the sense they're not truly revolution. On the radical left, you have the Bernies and the AOCs and the Elizabeth Warrens. And those people flap their wings. They talk a good game, like you said, talk, workers, blah, 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 revolution. That is just talk. They, in fact, attack the DNC. But the goal there is to bring in the working people who are really upset in this country, 25% unemployment, if you actually look at it, back into believing the establishment one wing. On the other side, same thing. You have people like Cruz, and now, unfortunately, it's also become Trump. Trump talked a good game, but, you know, he never locked up Hillary. I mean, I supported him, funded him, gave him a lot of support all throughout. But at the end of the day, they never went after the real issue of election fraud, which is the electronic voting machines. They talked about mail-in ballots, just like the Democrats talk about voter suppression. And now you have Trump. Yeah, he's going to attack the RNC, right? They'll do that game, and they'll try to bring us back into WWE wrestling. But at the end of the day, he's not breaking away and building up a bottoms-up movement. Bernie didn't do that either. So Trump has become the Bernie of the right, and Bernie's a Bernie of the left. And this is about flapping the wings, getting people riled up, because they do not want working people in this country to go back into their neighborhoods, build community. They don't want people to understand the science that I put together, that the real power comes bottoms up. It has never come from these politicians and billionaires. Ivanka Trump or Jared Kushner, I'm sorry. It's not come from them. It's come from bottoms up. And that's what we need to understand. In the course, we teach people what occurred in the late 1800s in this country, in the late 1900s, when women, working people, bottoms up people, rose up, bottoms up. That's when we got infrastructure in this country. That's when we got nutrition. That's when we got the public, education. In the early stages, that was pretty good, right? Elimination of child labor, vitamin A. That's when infectious diseases fell, not because of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, because there was a bottoms up powerful movement. And that's what expanded the American pie for all people between 1948 to 1971. And after that, the left and the right got together. The right wing said, anytime working people rise up, they must be communists, right? And then the left wing took advantage of that vacuum, and then they took over the unions, and they made them top down. So right now, there is no independent workers movement in this country. And if you say that, both wings attack working people. That's why we need to build a bottoms-up movement, and we need to build it. But just as you can't build a bridge without understanding Newton's laws, or you can't build an airplane without understanding Bernoulli's principle, the scientific principles I put together, Tom, provide the principles for how do you create that movement. And it has to be founded in engineering principles, not in marketing principles created by some guy who comes up with, okay, let's have everyone scream, lock her up, right? Let's have everyone do this. That's what happened. You rile up people and you don't do anything.